everybody. Welcome to What to Watch with Your Popcorn. I'm Rob.
And I'm Dave.
And it's close to the end of the year, so we are going to make our final What to Watch with Your Popcorn video for 2010, and we're going to be doing a review of the 1985 version of Alice in Wonderland. And Dave, you probably remember earlier this year, we reviewed quite a bunch of Alice in Wonderland versions earlier this year to kind of coincide with Tim Burton's film that came out back in March.
Right.
Yeah, a bunch of them. And I gotta say, after watching all these different versions, there's like pros and cons to each one of what works, what doesn't work. This version was done originally as a two-part TV miniseries. Part one was mostly Alice in Wonderland, and part two was Through the Looking Glass. It had a big all-star cast, like most of the other Alice in Wonderlands that we've reviewed.
Yeah.
And it featured a lot of big-name early TV and back then recent TV stars, Broadway stars, stage performers, and movie stars from the long time ago and up to that point. And
also some really popular musicians too.
Yeah, like a Ringo Starr was in Yours the Mock Turtle.
Right.
Yeah, I've reviewed this movie before on my other YouTube channel, and this is not anything new. This is really my least favorite version of Alice in Wonderland. I mean, this is the version that I guess from my generation. I mean, it seems like every generation has their own version of Alice in Wonderland. There was one in the 80s and the 90s and all that, but
right.
Let's start with you. This was your first time watching this version, right?
Right.
Yeah, so what was your reaction to it?
I didn't really care for it at all. I mean, it was kind of over the top for me with all the singing and all that. I mean, the 1972 had like the same type of stuff, but at least that kind of, you know, it didn't drag as much as this one did, and it went somewhere, and the acting was a little bit better in that one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't crazy about the songs either, but one thing, I personally, here's the weird thing about it, I don't think that this version is quite as faithful as some of the other versions of Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, but the weird thing is, this is the only version that I can think of where they add pretty much everything from both books. Most versions either just make Alice in Wonderland and they just take like Tweedledee and the White Knight, pluck them into the Alice in Wonderland, or
like the Disney version.
Yeah, or the 1933 version, which used both books, but they really cut chapters and all this stuff and kind of crammed it down, and it made it really whittled them down. But this version is the only one I can think of that uses pretty much every chapter. And my problem with it is, I feel like there's versions that have been done much more faithfully. Like, for example, the Duchess scene. There's in the book and in a lot of other versions, she sings "Speak roughly to your little boy" and has a little funny number there.
Yeah.
Here she sings a song about hatred, and they throw that out.
Yeah. Or
the Mock Turtle scene.
Yeah, in the Mock Turtle scene, they left out. They changed the song altogether. It wasn't "Beautiful Soup." It was a whole different song.
It was a song about nonsense ruling the world or something like that. Like they changed a lot, or they changed the Cheshire Cat scene altogether. And I mean, I think this version was done more to showcase the people rather than showcase the story. Like, even the 1933 version had an all-star cast, but they stuck very close to the stories, you know, and to Lewis Carroll's dialogue. And another thing that I didn't like is, I don't like when they try to add a theme to it, because I don't think that's what Carol was going for. Like in this case, the theme is conquering your fears and growing up. Alice has to conquer her fears and grow up, just like in the 1999 version where Alice had a piano lesson and she had to conquer her fears. And I feel like it's weird seeing the Wonderland characters kind of give her some guidance and all this other stuff.
Yeah, they made this one like real educational. It almost reminded me of like the TV series that used to be on Saturdays back in the 90s. It was more like that, but it stuck to the main story instead of just like being about anything.
Yeah, but I think for the most part, the cast for the most part was pretty good. There were some performers that I think that's another problem. It seemed like like I said, they made this version just to showcase the performers. Like the comedians, whenever a comedian is playing a part, they pretty much take the characters and make it their comic personalities, for example, and all that. And they showcase Sammy Davis Jr. as the caterpillar, where he gets a dance number, and sing number and all that. But what do you think of the Alice, the child actor who played Alice?
I didn't really care much for her. I mean, to begin with, she wasn't British. I wish they had casted somebody British.
Yeah.
And she kind of to me, she wasn't really stuck up enough, and she wasn't like worried about things as much. She wasn't as nervous. I mean, usually Alice is supposed to be nervous, and she's supposed to be like real timid. I mean, she knew she basically had a grip on things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the weird thing. I mean, Tina Majorino from the 1999 version's from California, but then again, she had a British accent. But the 1933 version, they cast a Brooklyn Alice, and she didn't have a British accent either. But yeah, I think it's better, perhaps, if they had casted a British child actress for this part.
Yeah.
But overall, this is my weird reaction to it. On the one hand, I think there's more faithful versions of Alice in Wonderland that stick closer to the book, but on the other hand, it does have a very good cast. Some people do feel like, I felt like they were phoning it in occasionally, but overall, I'm really stuck in the middle here. On the one hand, I think there's more faithful versions of Alice in Wonderland, but this is the only version I can think of where they try to include everything. I mean, what about you? Would you recommend this version?
Not really.
No?
I mean, it did include everything, and it stuck to the story, but it's just over the top and just corny, real campy in my opinion.
Okay, well, I'll just say this: if you prefer a version of Alice in Wonderland that's very close to the book, this is probably not it. If you want one where it's family oriented and you just want to have a good time and see famous stars from the past and all that, then this is probably the version for you. But me, I've never liked this version. I think there's better versions. Yeah. But then again, as I said, every version of Alice in Wonderland that we've reviewed for this channel has its pros and cons. There's stuff that works. There's stuff that doesn't work. So, yeah. Okay, so that's it for What to Watch with Your Popcorn. Thank you very much for watching, and you guys know what to do. You just leave your comments about either the review or about your thoughts of this version of Alice in Wonderland if you have seen it. And of course, you guys have a good year, and hopefully we'll see you next year. Thank you very much for watching.
Yeah, that was better. Except